Go.
Assalamu alaikum. You're listening to me, Sharmeen Ziauddin, on Let's Talk About It on Ramadan Radio 87.9 FM, on ramadanradio.org, and streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. Today we're in conversation with Willowbrook Farm even, and they're going to be talking to us about lots of things. But before I start, I just want to give you the number in case you want to get in touch, ask a question, or you can even text or call in. The number is 077 614 60614. That's 077 614 60614. So we have two members of the Willowbrook family today. We have Dr. Lutfi Radwan, who started Willowbrook Farm 17 years ago with his wife Ruby. Dr. Lutfi studied geography in London before completing a PhD in Oxford on irrigation and society. So Dr. Lutfi and his wife gave up their jobs to start the farm, where they sought to rear animals ethically, nurture the environment on the farm, and live sustainably. They now live in a house made of mud, which they built, and deliver ethical and sustainable produce to customers in Oxfordshire and beyond. And on the right of Dr. Lutfi, we have Lamia, who joined the family in 2014 when she married their son Halal. She does lots of things on the farm, which she can tell us all about. She's also bringing up their two children and obviously Dr. Lutfi's grandchildren, mashallah. So, assalamu alaikum to you both. Welcome to the show.
Alaikum assalam. Nice to be here.
No, it's really nice to have you. I know it's Ramadan, it's really busy, so really appreciate your time. So let's start with a description of what is it like on a normal day on the farm for a Willowbrook family member. What is it like?
Oh, well, I wouldn't describe any day as normal, but definitely always really busy. So
well, there's the basics of the sort of animals. So I mean, there is, if there's a routine at all, it's a daily and weekly routine, letting the birds out, ensuring that they've got water and feed, mucking out the houses, putting in fresh sawdust. So there's a lot of manual labor and animal care, checking on the sheep, moving them from different field to access the pasture, getting them in, checking their feet. And then there's the sort of weekly or monthly or seasonal routines of once a week we do take our chickens into our abattoir, we process them on the farm, we do all the slaughter on the farm, and the butchery. Khalil, Lamia's husband, is now an accomplished butcher and prepares and packages all of our meat. On a sort of longer scale, you've got the seasonal things like shearing the sheep come, once a year. So those things punctuate the days, the weeks, and the months. Yeah. And then on top of that,
it's just all seasonal
you can talk
work
about the chaos and preparing for visitors. And
so right now we're really busy preparing for the festival in the summer and our open days, which inshallah after Eid, the first one will be on the 15th. So that will be the full tour activities.
15th of May,
15th
starting.
Of May.
Yeah.
So the first weekend after Ramadan, inshallah, we'll be really busy with that. We've also got our campsite as well,
right, that's
which
also
is opening.
So the weekends get very busy more with the interface. I mean, we always felt that what we were doing on the one hand was farming in a halal tayyib way, that we were doing the right thing. But the other half of that is letting people know and getting people involved and bringing other people in to take responsibility for their food by seeing what we do. So the weekend is sort of given over to the open days where we show them around the farm, we talk about the ethics, and we have a lot of fun, showing them how we do things like spinning wool, or the different sort of making cheese from the dairy, from the goats. A lot of activities just to highlight natural living as opposed to shopping at Aldi's.
Right. So tell me how you came about, starting a farm and just making such a big decision, such a, a drastic lifestyle change. Like, where did it all come from all those years ago?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, both me and Ruby went into a sort of academic life. We were both teachers. My area was very much environment and soil and water, so there was that interest. And then we had a young family, as you do, and you start to think about where their food comes from. And I guess it was a sort of coalescence of different reasons, our own, Islamic sort of principles, but also bringing up a family and seeing how distanced we are from the food that we're eating, and wanting to take control of what we're doing. And then I guess most people would stop at that and, you know, put that idea away. But the good thing about me and Ruby is that we were particularly silly, and we didn't. We actually just said, yeah, let's do this. Let's sell our house. Let's see if we can buy some land. And we bought, you know, 45 acres and moved on in a caravan. So I guess, you know, the biggest strength we had was that we were our blind faith, really. And then it evolved from there. The kids all mucked in. It was just an experience for them all growing up. And we've even pulled in extra hands along the way.
No, it sounds, I mean, it sounds idealistic. And I think lots of people would love to do something like that, but very, very few people are able to do it or have the sort of gusto or I guess the courage to take that step. So
yeah, that's fair enough. But I do want to say one thing, that everyone has to take responsibility. So regardless of what you feel you can do, you have to be aware of what's happening around you. And the environment is probably the single most pressing issue for humanity. And as Muslims, we have a lot in the Quran, the principles that, you know, lead us to understand there's a natural balance, that we have a khulafa, we have this role of khulafa, responsibility. And individually, that's all you're asked about. You know, you're not asked about some of the global issues, but you are responsible. So we do feel that customers that come to us, they don't have to buy a farm, but what they're doing is the right thing. They're saying, where does my food come from? How's it produced? How can I be sure that I'm putting my money and my resources into doing the right thing? Not everyone has to be as crazy as us, though. You know, a few more crazes would be good. Yeah, we found another one.
So how many animals do you have on the farm?
Do you want the numbers? I actually know that.
Okay, I don't know the numbers. I just know what we have.
Approximately.
Yeah, poultry, we reared them from chick to mature birds. So they actually are in batches of about 300. Every time that we're dispatching 300 at the end of their life at around 14 weeks, we're bringing on 300 new chicks. So over the stages, that's nearly, I think, 2,500 birds from day one to 12 weeks old. And with the sheep, we have at this moment, we have about 140, which is about 60 ewes and about 80 lambs.
Wow.
And then we've got seasonal things like the geese, which we bring on. We have about 100 geese and the turkeys. We also have the laying birds. We have a flock of laying birds for eggs. We have some goats that we're milking. We have a couple of alpacas. And we have 2 horses. Yeah. Like, that's pretty much it. We've got a dog. We've got 5 cats. In fact, the cats have just increased by 4 this morning, so it's 9 cats probably, because we just had 4 kittens born last night.
Congratulations! You don't. I noticed you didn't mention cows.
No, we don't keep dairy on the farm. We would need a bigger acreage for that, really, and it's something that we haven't moved into yet.
Cows need a lot of land and you know, a lot more care, but so we actually source our beef from a local farm called Grange Farm, and all our information about this is up on our website, but whenever we work with other businesses, we always make sure that they rear to our standards. Right. And you know, we work really closely with them as well, which is really, really good.
Yeah. So in terms of, you know, halal standards, so you hand slaughter your poultry, and is the lamb as well?
No, the lamb and beef go to an abattoir in Whitney.
Oh, the lamb as well.
Okay. A halal abattoir, and they've had the same Pakistani slaughterman, in fact, who's been there for as long as we've been farming. So we have a good relationship with him, and it's a very local abattoir, so we just drive the animals from here about 15 miles to Whitney.
Okay, so there's a huge thing, as you probably know, about HFC, HMC. So your meat is not certified by those bodies. Can you explain a bit about that?
Do you want to or me?
I don't mind. So it's up to you.
I don't mind. No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, the main reason is we feel that a lot of certifying bodies do not look at the whole life of the animal. They just look at the point of slaughter. So you get these chickens which could have been abused for a lot of their lives, but at the point of slaughter, it could be perfect. So in essence, like, you can have them as certified halal, but in the Quran, you've got these 2 words, halal and tayyib, which are constantly together, and that's looking at the bigger picture rather than just the point of death. So, I mean,
Yeah, that's the first most important point. We don't have confidence, I'm sorry to say, in them. And I've spoken to people who are, high up in HMC and HFA, and they do readily admit that they can't look at the sort of the downstream side of actually the rearing. So it means really all of the halal meat that's coming through is factory farmed. And I would say that's a no from the start. You can't really end the life in a halal way if it's had a haram existence throughout the life. Plus the impact of that sort of farming on the environment is another issue. But the other thing I would add slightly to add to what Lamia said is even at the point of slaughter, we're talking about such large scale slaughterhouses, such mass process with animals being shackled on, conveyor belts and being dipped in electric baths or not being dipped in them. To talk about stunning or non-stunning, all of this is a moot point when you've got such suffering in the process in both HFA and HMC abattoirs. I think both rule each other out in that sense from being what we would really call halal. So we try, and with our birds, if you come and visit the farm, you'll see as little chicks, they begin their life comfortably. They move a few meters out onto the range, and once a week they move just a few meters back to the abattoir. It's a very contained, happy circle where at each point they're living a natural life.
So how did we lose the word tayyib from halal? Like, how are we so fixated on halal and just the method of slaughter, and everything leading up to that we've kind of just dropped as a sort of society?
I think a lot of it is it's just not talked about enough. Certainly when I was growing up, I went to an Islamic school every Saturday, and they would talk about the slaughter, but they wouldn't talk about the life. And whenever they mentioned halal, they never mentioned tayyib. I never knew that word until coming here and actually learning about it.
And actually noticing it in the Quran, because that's the point. It's always been there. I think that might be the point. It's always been there. If you look at traditional lives 100, 150 years ago, or going back further, even in England, there was a much more traditional relationship with your food. You were closer to the source of production, and the methods of production were not automated and mechanized and industrialized. So I think we haven't noticed what's happened to us. It's sort of slipped by without us realizing. And suddenly we've gone from environments that we nostalgically remember as being the traditional way that food was reared to a mass industry where you have no idea of the steps that product that you put on your table took to reach you. And if you actually did know about each of those steps, you'd become a vegetarian, obviously.
I've heard that a lot about abattoirs and things, the way that abattoirs are in this country, that a lot of people, that's what they say, you'd become vegetarian if you actually visit one and see what goes on. I mean, is it a fact that it's demand, it's the supply, it's supply and demand. So the demand has increased so much over the last 30, 40 years where we're eating meat every day, and maybe that wasn't always the case. And I mean, is it your methods of farming, are they sustainable in terms of meeting the demand? If everybody was farming like that, how I mean, it's a difficult question.
I know what I can say, but you have a go.
Okay, so to break that down, no, I've completely forgotten the question, sorry.
Well, is it the issue of demand? I would say, if you can make any comments after, certainly, but no, we can't meet the demand, quite simply because the demand is unsustainable, and we shouldn't be trying to meet the demand. And in terms of the cost of food, that's the other side of it. So we all know we're all eating a lot more meat than we ever used to. That sort of level of meat consumption is unsustainable. The other side is that the amount we're spending on that meat has become so little. If you go back 100 years again, I think actually to the 1940s, oh, it's almost 100 years now, isn't it? My God, 80 years ago, they were spending nearly 50% of their income on food. Now we spend something like 5 or 7%. It's really a small amount of our income that's actually spent on food. And that's because it's become so cheap because of the industrial process. So the demand is unsustainable, but again, you have to flip that a bit and say, well, why is the demand unsustainable? Because it's been pushed on us by a system, an industrialized system that wants us to spend, wants us to buy. So you can't just blame the consumer, but at the end of the day, we need to start to wake up and address the problems.
It's like you need a societal shift. Sorry, Lamia, go on.
No, okay, I was going to add to that. So, well, no, just the cost of meat. It makes it so accessible, and then what once was a delicacy now is so readily available, and you can just go to any shop and buy it anywhere.
Yeah, no, it's a big issue, certainly. I mean, what are the benefits of eating more wholesome or tayyib meat, like health benefits? In terms of organic produce and
firstly, by cutting out the non-natural foods that we're eating, and we're eating in such large amounts. I mean, everyone knows, if you've seen this Super Size Me documentary or whatever, any of these things, it leads to obesity because it's basically the type of, I don't know the chemical side, Lamia will probably be better at that. But so that sort of diet is very unhealthy. Firstly, the antibiotic use in the production of that meat is an extreme problem. We know that problems with antibiotics being able to actually deal with the issues anymore now, they're sort of waning in their efficacy. And it's mostly because of the use in animals and the farming industry, not in human use. So there's that whole side. If you then switch to a more healthy diet where you regard meat as not as the most important part of it, maybe a centerpiece, but a small amount, you're then including obviously a range of vegetables, ideally organic and naturally grown. So you're having that whole mix. I remember reading something just the other day about hunter-gatherers. I think you know this as well, that they would traditionally eat something like 50 different items in their normal daily diet, and now modern man has reduced that to about 3 or something. They're just, the ingredients in our food are so limited, the range of what we're getting. So the range of all these different nutrients and minerals and trace elements and different things going into our body has been so reduced. Obviously farming reduced it a lot. So I'm not saying let's go back to wild foraging, even though that's something we actively do on the farm as well. But just having that mix of diet is obviously more healthy, cutting down the meat consumption, particularly white meats, the poultry. Yeah, I mean, it's good for us, good for the environment.
I was going to add, if we want to go back to just meat, so the diet of a factory farmed animal will not be the same diet as we would get here, so and what they would be used to. So what you're actually getting by buying non-organic meat is you're getting meat with far less nutritional value than it should have, and you'll see that with our chicken. So if you compared us to a shop bought chicken to our chicken, the color is different. The toughness is a lot tougher because they actually develop proper muscles. And the taste is very different, and because of that the cooking time actually varies a lot, and you don't get this kind of water leakage that you get in other meats, because they're just pumping them with water and oil. So that's just something you just can't trust.
So you eat a meal with some good quality meat, and you taste the flavor. You can eat less because you can't manage to eat more. Whereas if you eat this fluffy white rubbish from KFC or Kebab Kid or wherever, you can eat it and just keep eating it, and it does nothing for you.
Right. So is that all the animal products you sell are organic on your farm?
Yes, we farm organically. We do make this clear on the website. On the farm, we use fully organic practices. We talk about natural farming as far as possible, which means we don't use any chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, medication wherever we can avoid it. We don't use antibiotics, certainly not routinely. The only concession we've made to try and keep our price down is with our poultry. We do feed them a free-range diet, which is not grown on the farm. So the grain that we use is not a fully organic diet. So as a result, we don't label the poultry as organic.
But it's free range.
It's free range and naturally reared.
But
and
in that still, you can get really good quality free range feed. So it's still non-GM. There's no chemicals or hormones or anything in there, and all the grains are grown in the UK. So there's not that. This is a big point, because a lot of the organic federation sort of Soil Association or OF&G, their farmers are sourcing organic grain from Kazakhstan or from around the world. Firstly, we don't necessarily know the standards that it's actually grown under, but then you've got the massive implication of the transportation issues. And again, within an organic certification, you can actually get derogations to use chemicals, pesticides. So there are a lot of loopholes. We really say to our customers, come and see what we're doing. We can show you everything. And even with the feed that we're buying, we have
got information of where they're growing it, where it comes from in the UK, and we actually know a lot more about where our feed comes from than most organic farmers would.
Okay. For anybody who's just joined, you're listening to the Let's Talk About It show, and we're in conversation with Willowbrook Farm today. We're on 87.9 FM, ramadanradio.org, that's online, and streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. If you want to get in touch and ask anything or make a comment, the number is 077-614-60614. That's 077-614-60614. So let's move away from meat and let's talk about the environment. Now, climate change and all the aspects, our carbon footprint, everything to do with climate change is really at the forefront of, maybe people of our generation don't take it as seriously, but certainly the next generation is going to, their lives will revolve around it, undoubtedly. Can you give any advice to listeners about small things they could do? Because I do feel like worrying about the environment is kind of a privilege that a lot of people don't have. People are just trying to get on with their lives. That it's kind of a far away afterthought for a lot of people. But of course, there's so many people who are mindful of the environment as well. But in our communities, what sort of practical tips can you give in sort of everyday living to try and reduce our waste, be a bit more environmentally friendly?
Yeah, well, certainly if you look at it in a big picture, it can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'd say just make small changes to your day-to-day life, like maybe every week, make one small change, like change your toothbrush to a bamboo toothbrush rather than a plastic one. Again, you can get affordable ones, and maybe the main three things is reduce, reuse, recycle. So firstly, reducing how much plastic you buy and how much you use. Trying to reuse things around the house. I mean, instead of just throwing things away, maybe there's another use for them which you can use before you then think about recycling. You can join, there's so many Facebook groups out there now that I've joined that help you. If you've got something, say, oh, I'm not sure really what to do with this, can anyone help me? There's loads of communities out there that will say, well, you can go to this bank or you can do this with it, or do so. I mean, it's just knowing where to go to find that information.
There's a lot you can do, and I understand that it seems as if anything you do won't make a difference, or that it's too difficult to change. But that's not really the point. I think the point is to focus on yourself individually, and that's really all we're asked to do. I was watching the Seaspiracy documentary about the oceans, and it was frightening how actually the majority of what's going on out there is clearly out of our hands. In this case, it was the fishing industries. They were saying 60% of the stuff floating around in the oceans and on the beaches is actually the fishing nets. So yes, it's the factory farming, industrialized foods, cropping, sprays, oceans, all of that is out of our hands in a sense. But we should at least be trying to politically be aware of that, and maybe joining groups who are against it, avoid buying unsustainably sourced meats and foods. So there's a lot you can do, in your sort of political stance that you take. And I think it's important for Muslims to do that. But in terms of practical small things, like Lamia was saying, you're going to be asked about what you did. So take an audit of your family and your lifestyle and see what you can change. And it doesn't have to cost a lot more. Changing things like a toothbrush might seem small, but that's a practical thing you're using every day. Checking that you're not using plastic bags. Make sure you have got a cotton bag that you'll keep for life. And that's it. Stick with that. Use that all the time. Cumulatively, there's a lot of plastic you'll avoid getting involved in. In terms of how you're eating, the sort of foods you're eating, making sure, again, as I say, that is natural, healthy food. It doesn't have to cost more. Possibly growing some yourselves. There's a great thing about getting together with people. Come to the farm and see what we do. That's great. It'll inspire you. But then go home and see if you can get an allotment with, a couple of families down the road. Get together on an afternoon and get your kids out there planting seedlings and actually seeing something grow from a seedling to a bean sprout to an aubergine, and bringing that home and cooking it. The community aspect of that's really important. So there's a lot to do. A lot of really small steps. Using the bus, cycling, We've just recently invested in an electric vehicle now for the farms. We actually have a van which is running on electricity generated on the roofs of our buildings.
Wow.
There are small steps that you can do yourselves in that regard.
I mean, that's quite massive.
I think the counter argument to what you were saying, though, is that you can't not do anything because you're responsible. You know, you have to look. And if it's a question of cost, another thing that we found over the years is with clothes, we shouldn't be buying microfibers, polyesters and plastics. You know, who wants to be wearing plastic anyway? And we know it's bad for us. But you don't have to be going out and buying new. You can be going to charity shops. We, for many years, that's all we lived in, because the early years of the farm, we had no money, and everything came from charity shops. And, you know, you get incredibly good items from there. So you're recycling, you're buying natural fibers.
And even there's a lot of online secondhand shops that are popping up. There's certainly ones for kids' clothing that I've looked into for my children.
Absolutely.
So
kids' clothing is one of the worst probably for, you know, the sort of fibers. So take an audit of what you're doing. Everyone, I think, really, that's listening to this show, think about actually what you do in your life, where you get your products from, and see which ones you can slowly start to say, well, okay, that should be a natural material, that I can change, I can reduce this, I can buy quality meat but eat a lot less of it. You know, we have some actually relatively poor that buy from us, and they buy cuts like the cheaper cuts of lamb or beef, or
like lamb ribs.
And also using the bones to make stock and things. So it's a cheaper way of eating healthy food.
Yeah, I mean, going back to recycling, I mean, vintage clothing, secondhand clothing, it's all made a huge comeback. So I don't know whether that was on the back of you know, trying to be a bit more you know, wasting less and reusing less, but it is definitely, I think that's something positive for sure. In terms of other products, so you also do you have honey? Do you sell? I saw honey on your website. Is that your own hives?
We have our own, and we sell some that's not our own. Lamia.
So currently we get the honey that's stocked in the shop is from the Cotswolds farms, Foss Way. So they're quite local to us, but we have got a few hives on the farm, and we hopefully will be looking into doing our own honey soon.
We make an effort on the farm to produce everything for ourselves. So if you come to our cafe, chances are you'll be using all of our own products. The honey certainly supplies all of us. We grow a lot of veg on the farm, and that's all served in the cafe. So the things that we're not producing at a commercial level to be selling, you know, to customers to take away, at least they're found around the farm, in our house, and in the cafe on the farm. So we are sort of trying to be self-sufficient in that regard. At the moment, we've got 3 hives, and one is a lovely, really aggressive hive where they're already buzzing around. Aggressive is good because it means they produce a lot of honey, and last year they produced so much. So yes, yeah, it's really important. They're really important for the orchard because we've got a large orchard now on the farm that we planted about 6 years ago. And that's now developing, and of course, as the flowers blossom on there, the bees come and help them to pollinate, and so it's a lovely virtuous cycle.
And we're also doing a lot of landscaping now. We have the time to actually make the farm look really pretty, so we're planting a lot more flowers, and definitely bee and butterfly friendly varieties.
So anyone can sort of come on a weekend. Do you have to book before you come, and just for a visit?
Ideally, yes, because our cafe only runs on the events. It's good to get an idea of how many people we're expecting, and this helps us reduce waste. One thing that we've always hated is at the end of an event, lots of food being left and having to give it to the chickens because we can't eat enough of it ourselves.
Yeah, so we try and sort of cater for the numbers. So booking in advance does help us a lot to know how many people are coming. And if you look on the website, you'll see which activities are going on that weekend. So I don't know if you know the ones that are coming up, but we try and say what's actually happening on the farm. So if we're laying hedges, or if we're shearing the sheep, or spinning wool, or if there's any particular seasonal activity, you'll see that on the website, so you can book for that weekend.
Yeah, so what we'll do, we'll put the website address as willowbrookfarm.co.uk. Yeah, we'll put it in the Facebook chat, so for anybody who wants to have a look and check out any of your events. So Lamia, when I spoke to you before you came on air, you were saying about you know, your life before you joined the family. So it's really interesting. Tell us about how your life has changed since you got married.
Oh gosh, massively. So I get my food definitely, because my family, we used to eat meat quite a lot, and we used to just get it from, you know, the large supermarkets. We never really thought about where our food came from, and it was never really spoken about in my family. We just ate what was in front of us. We were just told eat, eat, eat. So by coming here, I learnt the life of a chicken. I've learnt about the slaughterhouses. I never questioned how a chicken went from being alive to being on my plate. So I definitely learnt a lot about what was going on, because that information isn't readily available to people. And yeah, just certain aspects of my life, again, cutting my plastics, really becoming conscious of the environment, which is something I didn't really think about beforehand, but by coming here, it really changed me.
But she's also got very interested in things like herbalism and natural sort of remedies, but also foraging. If you come to our cafe, you'll find a nettle and whatever cake.
I made a nettle and honey cake from nettles and common air honey, and I've also done dandelion lemonade. So starting to incorporate a lot more of that into the cafe. So before I married, I did a degree in genetics, hoping that I would go out and do lab work, but then it just changed. I started then working in a pharmacy, and then from the pharmacy I was like, oh gosh, we're relying so heavily on medication when I'm sure there is another way. Like if you just got a cold, the people were coming in saying, oh, have you got anything? And the pharmacist's first thing, the pharmacist we had was, oh, you know, why don't you drink chamomile tea and try this and try this? And they looked at her like she was crazy, saying, oh no, I just want drugs. You know, so I was like, okay, and then that got me interested in herbalism and learning about plants that heal, because a lot of medicines, they do derive from plants. Even if they're synthetically made, a lot of the compositions will be similar to a plant that they've based it on. And then from that, since lockdown, we've really started getting into foraging. So I'd go out with my kids, my husband, on our day off, we'd go to the woodlands and we'd see what we can pick up. Started off with mushrooms because it was autumn, and now it's just the wildflowers, wild garlic. Oh my god, that's changed my life.
So how is it in Ramadan? Because a lot of it, as you were saying, manual labor. It's quite a lot of physical work. Has Ramadan, is it usually a little harder?
Yes, it is a lot harder. I'm getting older as well, so I'm finding Ramadan very difficult at the moment. But in a way, you can just sort of switch off your brain and get on with manual work. So that's also not too bad, that as long as you're hitting things and not having to sort of write an essay. Some of the manual labor on the farm can just occupy your time, and before you know it, it's 5-6 hours have gone. But I think everyone finds it a little bit tough.
It is tough, but it's quite nice to have that time to just be able to focus on time without worrying about the time. Oh, I should probably be eating. I should probably be doing this. I should probably do that.
It gives so much more time. Yeah. I think a lot of people try and sleep through Ramadan, but on a farm, you actually don't have that option.
I mean, do you normally have to wake up at the crack of dawn anyway? On your daily?
No,
we don't do. We're not milking at a regular time. So really, 8 o'clock is fine for most things, as long as we're letting the birds out by 8 o'clock, and then they're being locked up at sunset. It's probably the other end of the day that goes on a bit, because you can't really finish until the sun goes down.
Do you get days off?
It's really hard to get days off.
Actually, holidays, days off or holidays.
With my husband, we've tried twice now, and it's kind of fallen through because there's just no way. There's always something going on, and we just can't. But where we can, we try and take time. There's always breaks during the day where lambs aren't coming out, or
and we're trying to make sure everyone has that option of a holiday. Though now I think actually it's forbidden until after August, until the festival's over. They can maybe think about something in September.
Yeah, no, because everybody needs some downtime, don't they?
We take it seasonally.
Job. Yeah, I guess is it winter where you're probably not as busy, or is it?
Kind of after
I know nothing about farming, clearly.
It kind of shuts at before, because that's when all the animals
the farm
are
shuts,
locked
but
up.
then we're working up toward the Christmas rush where we've got
Yeah,
the geese and the turkeys that we've been rearing. So, you know, late November, December get very busy. If there is a downtime, it's probably January and February, just before lambing starts, because then lambing starts at the end of February and you're back into it.
Yeah.
So would there be
There's a lovely graphic. Sorry, I'll draw your attention to it. My other daughter-in-law, Ria, drew it, and it tries to show the farming year in a sort of cyclical thing. So have a look on our website for the farming year calendar or something we've called it, and it shows you the different activities through the year, which is quite fun.
That should be on the Visit Us page.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned your other daughter-in-law. So there's you've got 4 children, right? I say children, grown up. 5. Oh, you've got 5. Okay. So how many of you guys are there at the moment who live on the farm?
Everyone lives on the farm, so that's 5, 6, 7, and then with the grandchildren, 8, 9, 10, 11 of us. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's
11 of us. Of the 5 children, my eldest daughter doesn't work on the farm. She's living at home. She's a writer. And then I have the 2 boys who are working on the farm with their partners. And they pretty much have divided the work between them on the farm, which is good. They're slowly taking over. Then I have a daughter who should have been studying in London, but she's back home with us because of lockdown. She helps out on the farm, but doesn't actually work. And then Ali, the younger boy who's doing his A-levels, he does work part-time. He'll do jobs, you know, sort of weekend jobs with us, but he's still studying. That's all of the kids, isn't it?
It's hard to separate farm from personal, so everyone kind of mucks in when needed.
Absolutely. Even down to things, because we talk about farming, but people who support us need to understand that, you know, we're not just doing the farming of the food, but it's this wider aspect of looking at energy use, looking at our waste and recycling. Any customer that visits the farm will know we use compost toilets where we recycle all the poo that you leave with us if you come and visit us. Everything is recycled on the farm. But things like heating, all of our heating comes from a biomass boiler that uses the sustainably managed woodlands that we planted 17 years ago. So the timber that comes off the trees, excess timber, not cutting them, but just managing them, provides us the fuel, which we then burn in the boiler to provide the heat energy in the house. So all of us, even those that think they don't work on the farm, they'll get booted out of the house in the evening to go and load up the boiler and make sure that we've got heat coming in. So everyone does their bit, because it's a whole lifestyle. It's a holistic lifestyle. It's not just about rearing an animal. And that's where we have a bit of an issue with some of these bigger organic or free range farms that might tick the boxes of producing in a free range way, but their lifestyles are completely at odds with the way that they're rearing the animals. We try and actually live the lifestyle. You mentioned earlier, we live in a house built of mud. We literally built our own house out of clay, sand and straw. And all of us built it together. Fortunately, Lamia wasn't here.
I missed out the most of it.
Over a few years, the family literally built our own home. We've built all the other buildings. And as I say, we recycle and use all the resources and produce our own energy.
Yeah, I mean, really, it does sound amazing and quite unbelievable. I think people will find it hard to even relate. But I mean, in terms of living in a big family, that's lots of us can relate to that. But obviously living the way you guys do is really lovely, actually, mashallah. I have to ask, who does the cooking? How do you all, like, do you all eat separately? Do you eat together? Like, how does it work?
Well, we tend to eat separately most days, but then when we do come together, someone's usually responsible for cooking the meat, someone's responsible for cooking the potatoes, and then the greens is someone else's job. So we do divide it because there are quite a lot of us to feed.
Yeah, well, Lamia and Khalil and their kids are living here separately as well. So they've got the cabin on the farm, which is different to the main house. So this is a timber building that we'd built earlier. But over in the main house, we all try and share it. It's sort of between the 5 or 6 people there. Everyone does different jobs. And if you're not doing the cooking, you do the washing up. I'm probably the one that gets the easiest ride. They tend to let me off, partly because I don't cook very well, but also I am mostly outdoors. So Rube is very kind and tends to to not include me except in the sort of cleanup rota.
Okay, cool. And you guys are in Oxfordshire, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if anybody wants to sort of come and pay a visit or come to this festival, tell me about the festival before I tell them where they can find it.
So the festivals run over 2 days. So this year it's the 7th and 8th of August. During the days, we have a range of different workshops and activities. Huge range from like beatboxing, ribbon dancing, natural wall dyeing, vocal harmony, singing, watercolor painting, all sorts of arts, and then performances. And then on the
like archery
and this year we've got a big top circus coming.
Right.
So there's so many different things. And then on the Saturday in the evening we have live performances. So this year we've got Richard Thompson, who if you've heard of Fairport Convention, so they're like a massive folk rock group. And he was a co-founder, and so he's been a guitarist since he was 18. He's now in his 70,
70, I think. Yeah, he's getting on.
But he's a huge hit with, we've listened to him for years, and he's, in my mind, one of the best guitarists of all time. Then we've got Cheng Yu, and she's an internationally renowned performer of the pipa, which is a 4-string Chinese lute. She's been here a few times before, so she's really lovely, and she's performed so well. And lastly, we have Cambridge Taht, which play classical Arabic music. So it's a range of world music we tend to have in the evenings. Last year we had Songhoi Blues, we had jazz, and we had a recorder group. So it's every year it's something different.
So do you camp out there so people can camp out there and stay the weekend? Is that what happens?
Yeah, we have our campsite open.
Most people will come on a Friday night before, and then they'll camp Saturday night, probably Sunday night, and leave on the Monday.
And our campsite that weekend is pretty much exclusive to festival goers, and we have half price camping to go with the whole thing.
Right, so you can camp any weekend. It doesn't have to be the festival weekend.
Camping can be any time from now, and we're open now until September. So anytime you want to come, we're open.
And we haven't mentioned.
Oh gosh, the woodland.
Well, you go ahead.
Okay, so in our woodland, so those who camp generally have access to the various farm walks and our woodland adventure playground. So we've got about 2 massive treetop houses. We've got various swings and a lookout area, and it was built by. So this is the bit where I'm.
Well, that's John Driscoll. I forget the name of the company, but they did some of the play areas in the Olympic Park after that was redeveloped.
Oh, wow.
So he came and helped us by using stag oak, which is the sort of wild, natural sort of twisty oak, which created the ladders and the sort of the doorways and things. So it's a really wonderful place to chill out and play. He's recycled things, so he's used doors as for the walls, and there's like a massive grand piano like strings in one of them that you just play. It makes the whole woodland sound really eerie.
Do you have to do you bring your own camping equipment, and you just, how does it work? Because I've never been camping and I've always wanted to.
It's price per pitch, so we provide the pitch, and then basically you bring your equipment. Right. We have a few kind of communal fire pits where you can go in the evenings and have a lovely campfire with toasted marshmallows or whatever. Halal marshmallows.
Halal marshmallows, of course. No, it sounds so lovely, and it's been so nice speaking to you. So refreshing, really, to speak a family like yourselves. And I hope that, inshallah, there's barakah in your business and your family, and it continues to grow. And hopefully, you've inspired lots of listeners today. Maybe they can make, as you said, small changes. And we'll put the website on the chat for anybody, so they can, if they want to buy anything from your shop or meat or lots of things that you sell, then they can visit your website. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I hope you have a great Eid. So we've only got a couple of minutes left. So I think what I've learned is that you can make small changes, and it doesn't have to cost the earth. But we can all, I guess we are accountable for ourselves. And even though we might think it's a drop in the ocean, it's that's all we can do. Something's better than nothing, right? So thank you everybody for listening. You've been listening to the Let's Talk About It show with me, Sharmeen Ziauddin, on Ramadan Radio. Until next time, which is going to be on Thursday, by the way. I've got a very special guest coming on Thursday, Tez Ilyas, the comedian and author and actor. So do join me at 1 o'clock on Thursday. Until then, thanks for listening. Jazakallah khair. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Alaikum salam.